Been reading books of old, the legends and the myths, Achilles and his gold, Hercules and his gifts, Spider-Man's control, and Batman with his fists. And clearly I don't see myself upon that list. But she said, where'd you wanna go? How much you wanna risk? I'm not looking for somebody with some superhuman gifts, some superhero, some fairy tale bliss. Just something I can turn to, somebody I can kiss. I want something just like this. Do-do-do, do-do-do, do-do-do. Oh, I want something just like this. Do-do-do, do-do-do. Oh, I want something just like this. I want something just like this. I've been reading books of old, the legends and the myths, the testaments they told, the moon and its eclipse, and Superman unrolls a suit before he lived. But I'm not the kind of person that it fits. She said, where'd you wanna go? How much you wanna risk? I'm not looking for somebody with some superhuman gifts, some superhero, some fairy tale bliss. Just something I can turn to, somebody I can miss. I want something just like this. I want something just like this. Oh, I want something just like this.
All right, hello guys. So we're back, and we're gonna do a little Q&A. I was thinking maybe we do a tier list today, but I was like, let's just do something casual and all of that. And yeah, so if you guys have any questions you want to ask about the Winds of Winter, A Song of Ice and Fire, anything you guys want to ask, feel free to let loose. Let your questions let loose. You want to ask about the phrase, you want to ask about whoever, okay? But hi Dakota, how are you? Mats, I was like drinking water and I saw your comment pop up. I almost choked, so that was funny. But yeah, how are you? Hi Matthew, how's it going? Make sure, Matthew, remember our draft is Friday at 7:30 Central Time. We have to remedy these songs you've been playing lately on stream. They've been bangers. That's one of my favorite songs of all time. I used to jam to that song in high school. It's one of my favorites. I also really like the Chainsmokers, and you guys probably won't appreciate that because, you're uncultured sometimes. Damn Grease, too close. I can see the dirt in your pores. Well, you got to be close sometimes. I've been having a little bit of acne, like right here. I'm assuming because of my glasses. I don't know. It just be that way sometimes. I'm liking, though. I will say this. I'm liking that the weather where I live, we're finally getting to where it's almost hoodie weather. And what do I mean by almost hoodie weather? It's in the morning when I wake up. It's great. It's like 60s, it's like perfect. Like it's a little bit too cool to wanting to be wearing like short sleeves. But then by the time you get to like middle of the day, it's too warm. So we're almost there. We're almost at fall time. And I don't like that. It's my favorite season. Last time I signed up for a draft, I got sent to Vietnam. Old man, Dakota. Old man. Oh man, it's cooling off down here too finally. Yes. T-shirts all year. You're one of those crazy psychopaths, Mats, that's like, I'm going to wear T-shirts when it's 20 degrees outside. There's some psychopaths that I used to see going to college where it would be like snow on the ground. It is freezing temperatures. Like it's less than 20 degrees and they got like gym shorts on and like a short sleeve shirt on. And I'm just like, what are we doing? Dakota is stabbing his girlfriend. Interesting. If JC was here in the chat, he would be giving you all sorts of shit for that. But yeah, Winter's coming, and I'm here for it. I am a big winter guy as well. I like fall. I like my winter. I'm kind of done with summer. I'm ready for it to be over. But yeah. I got a question. How much longer is Sansa gonna be up in the Vale? So I think Sansa has to be up into the Vale for at least a good portion of the Winds of Winter, just based upon the fact that we have a whole plot of her marrying Harry the Heir. So let's just try to piece this together. Now, the hard part about predicting Sansa is how much of a focus is she going to be for George? In the last 2 books, she's only had 3 chapters. She's not really been a major focus of the story lately. The Winds of Winter, so we're going to have the sample chapter. So let's say that sample chapter stays relatively the same. She meets Harry the Heir. She starts, getting him under, what's the words I'm looking for? Wrapped around her finger. And then at that point, okay, now we have discussions of the potential marriage, and you have the setup to the marriage. Then maybe the marriage happens, or Harry the Heir dies. I think you're looking at least the first half of the Winds of Winter will almost exclusively be spent on the Harry the Heir plot. And then the second half, I think, will be more about unraveling Littlefinger. I'm someone that believes if this is going to be only 2 more books left in the series, Littlefinger has to be done by the end of the Winds of Winter, or at least very early on in A Dream of Spring. We need to get rid of these antagonist type characters. And leaving them around, all of that kind of stuff, is just going to prolong the story more because it doesn't help our characters get unified. And so I think that Sansa will stay at the Vale for the bulk majority of the Winds of Winter. And I could see her, like maybe her last chapter or 2, is kind of on her way to the Riverlands, maybe to the Trident, the Neck area, and going towards like maybe the north. Maybe she hears the news of the wall coming down or the other's threat. I think likely that she will be there for a good portion of the Winds of Winter. Sansa seems stuck. Yeah, that's the problem. And I think this really stems from, if you're George R.R. Martin, how quickly do you want to get through the Sansa plot? And that seems like a big issue that he had, because Sansa is a character that already seems primed and ready to go in a position where she could take that next step to gaining more power. So what did George have to do? Well, George had to slow her plot line down because, well, young Griff wasn't in Westeros yet. Arya still has a lot of her stuff that needs to go on. Like, Sansa is one of those characters that I think is very much ahead of a lot of the POVs. Like, I think that she is much more ready for the end game of the series if there's only 2 books left than everyone else in the story. Characters like Daenerys, think about all that she has to do compared to Sansa, or compared to, Arya, or compared to any of these other characters that are still not really relevant to the plot right now. That's where I think the issue is. Maybe that mercenary will kidnap her to get her out of there. I doubt it, Mats. I do doubt it. Littlefinger gone and wins by what means do you think? So I think that the natural conclusion for the character of Littlefinger is that Sansa kind of realizes what he's been up to. And it's kind of the idea of the student becomes the master. She starts putting all these pieces together, the manipulation Littlefinger's been doing, coming to the conclusion of some of the things that he did with, betraying Ned, and even some of the stuff I talked about, like him more or less screwing over Sansa, forcing her to marry Tyrion instead of Willis. I think that Sansa is, as she grows up and she becomes older and more mature, she's going to look back on things, and I think she's going to start to piece everything together. And I think that's going to really tip over when you have whatever you think is going to happen with Harry the Heir or Robin. I think that's going to boil into Sansa going, Littlefinger is really just using me as a piece, albeit he likes me, right? He has this weird pedophilic relationship with Sansa, but still, let's say he kills Harry the Heir because Harry the Heir kind of poses a weird like chess piece for Littlefinger, because Littlefinger can't control Sansa if she is now married to Harry the Heir as well. Anyway, he can still try to manipulate her, but it's not the same dynamic. And so if he then kills off Harry the Heir and Sansa finds this out, it's just kind of putting all those pieces together. Right now, all the pieces have been set up on the board for Sansa to figure it out. She just hasn't done it yet. I am going to minimize the chat box. It looks a little big for me. I don't know. Maybe it's fine. I don't know. Question. Is there a reason the Battle of Winterfell in the show had to be there and not the neck? Seems like one of many tactical mistakes. So the issue with the show was they were speeding along trying to get through the plot. And so in the show it made sense because we are going to have limited episodes. They wanted to just get to the main battle. And that's the issue you run into is how do you resolve the others plot quickly? Because if you're saying, okay, we're going to have the battle with the others be at the neck, it's going to be, at the trident, whatever, it's going to take more time, right? That's the others conquering the north almost completely. It just takes more time. And so D&D, when you think about season 8, season 7, we only had 13 episodes between 2 seasons, whereas before we used to have 10 episodes. It's not a lot of time to develop a whole plot with the others and then resolve it. And so the reason that we didn't get to see it with the neck or any of that stuff also probably boils down to them being lazy. We already had the Winterfell set, so why not just use it for the Battle of the Others? So I think I agree though. I've always said, Dakota, that the most likely spot that if we have a big battle with the others, with the living versus the dead, will be the neck. It is the most logical place because if you're going to bring out all these forces together, remember George is not D&D. George makes us take time for our forces to travel. Think about Victarion, for instance. Like it takes him a good amount of time to travel from one side of the world to the other. And so we're not going to just have all of our forces just bam, they spawn in and they're at Winterfell. The neck and the trident makes the most sense because it's the middle of Westeros. It's the easiest for every faction to get there relatively quickly. And so it makes more sense to have all of our forces meet there instead of going all the way up north. So I just think it makes way more sense. With the focus on Bran, what would have happened if they shipped him to Essos once they knew the Night King came for him specifically? I mean, the show never goes anywhere with this, but I think the idea would be the others would still like curb stomp, go through the north and all of Westeros. The idea in the show is that they were using Bran as bait to kill the Night King. So if they sent Bran, over to Essos, it's just kind of delaying the problem. Like eventually the others are going to try and get to Bran, but it just would be down the line. So I don't think it really makes all that much of a difference. So lore-wise, the neck would make more sense. Yes, I think yes, and I even made a video about this with Daenerys and her vision. Like we've already had a dream prophesizing the idea that the great battle with the others is going to be on the Trident. So it makes more sense for it to be south, not in the north. How big of a role will the Isle of Faces and the God's Eye play in the end of the story? I think it's going to be a nexus point there towards the end with the others assaulting it. I could definitely see that. I could also see if we're going to get a story, which I think makes sense for George, where it's not a total victory or it's not any of that, it's a compromise that the others and the living come to some sort of agreement and the war is not won by like killing the Night King or whatever, it would make sense if that is the place where that happens. So I think it could be very significant. It's very significant. The real question, will George actually finish the Winds of Winter? So I haven't really done a stream specifically on that question or a video on that in a long time, but I think the problem is becoming, as the years go by, it's less and less likely we're going to see a true, completed, finished version of the Winds of Winter. I'm still holding out hope that we'll get the Winds of Winter, but I just think that George is getting older. It's not getting any easier to write the Winds of Winter. At what point are we not getting that? And I think the other part of that is you think about everything that's, coming out about George at BookCon and the way fans are interacting with him. He seems a lot more grumpy old man at this point. I don't know if the motivation is there for George to at least finish the series. I've given up on hope of the series being finished a long time ago, but the Winds of Winter, I think it's more and more likely that we're going to see whatever he has written. I think we'll get that at some point. Like however far he's gotten, I think eventually we'll see. but I don't think that we may never get like a completed version of Winds. It might feel a lot like Dance, where Dance, it doesn't end on its natural conclusion. Like the natural conclusion for Dance is really going to be the open to Winds. And so that's why I've always kind of looked at Dance with Dragons, and I think that of all of the books of the series, it's the one that might age the best if we get the Winds of Winter, because if we look at the Winds of Winter and the first third of that book is fantastic, it's going to make Dance look a lot better because a lot of that stuff is just, it's the conclusion of everything Dance set up. So we'll have to see. Agreed, Mats. That's another thing. The others would neutralize the neck. It's a good point. Hi, Ashley. How are you? Wins in 5 years, no doubt in my mind. How old is George? As of right now, if in 5 years, how old is George R.R. Martin? How old would he be? He'd be 81 years old. His birthday is in September, so yeah. He would be close to 82 years old if it was 5 years directly from now. Man, I mean, I'd be pushing it. That's all I'll say. That's pushing it. Copium is one hell of a drug. Yeah. How much would the fans be able to figure out the ending, presuming we only get wins? I think we could definitely figure it out a lot more. I think this is one thing that I noticed with the show is once you know how many seasons Game of Thrones was going to be, and you knew how many episodes it was, you could almost predict the way the show is going to go. And I don't think that's the case with the book necessarily, because the books are way more detailed and way more intricate. But, I mean, think about how long we've sat on Winds of Winter. You know, and I haven't been in the community in that whole gap, but in the portion that I've been in, think about how many theories have come out. Think about how much has been speculated about what the Winds of Winter will be. You think about how much we've gotten through the show. Now, I know I actually didn't get to watch Quinn's video yet, but he made a video on the show versus the book, and I'm interested to see what he has to say, because I do think there are things that from the show, obviously, that are going to be in the book. There's some things in the show that are just way too clever for D&D that are obviously like thought out by George. But there's other stuff in there that's like, okay, this doesn't really make sense for the books. I think that if we had a completed version of Winds of Winter and it got to where it needed to be, so Daenerys is in Westeros, or at least is on her way to Westeros. You know, we have Arya in Westeros. We have the resolution of the Brotherhood plotline. Jon becomes King of the North, or maybe the person in control of the North, whatever. You have the Bolton threat dealt with. Littlefinger threat, or Littlefinger plotline is either nearing its close or is at its close. Sansa coming into her power. Young Griff on the throne. Like, if all of those things like happened, and then we had one book left, and then unfortunately we never got to finish to the series, I think that what would eventually come out is we would probably see throughout the years, kind of similar to Tolkien, but I think differently, is we would eventually see what were George's thoughts for the ending of his series. So, for instance, you know, Game of Thrones, D&D knew parts of what the original ending that George wanted would be. Maybe stuff like that would come out once we've kind of got confirmation that the series was never coming or never finishing. I think that we would eventually be able to piece together a fairly good idea of what the end of the series would be. So, I don't know. Hi, Sydney. How are you? Also, members, I hope you enjoyed getting videos really early. I got those up for you guys very early last week, more or less. I tried a different style. I've usually, what I've done in my process for making videos has been I record kind of all of them and then I edit them afterwards. So it's kind of like I do my bulk recording, do my bulk editing, and then thumbnails, and then get them out to you guys. So I tried a different idea of just doing record, edit, get it out, instead of just doing it the other way. So, you know, we'll see. I kind of like it doing that way better. It makes me more refreshed on the video that I'm editing and stuff like that. So glad family time was good, Ashley. Hi, Michael. How are you? We all know who the story will, or how the story will end with a Frey on the throne. It's just the details of how we get there. Of course, Dakota. Of course, Black Walder will definitely be on the throne. Will Varys need to sabotage more in King's Landing to create chaos, or was Pycelle and Kevin enough to cause confusion? Maybe somehow manage to get Cersei in a leadership position again. So, I think Cersei will already be in a leadership position. You think about the Lannister support right now. Cersei is it. You know, Jaime is missing in the Riverlands. Kevin is now dead. Cersei is really all that's left of the Lannister power. And so even if the Lannister force wasn't behind Cersei, you know, at this point, or I would say earlier, they should be now, because she is the last remnants of that house. And so I think that already what Varys has done is enough. I think Varys will do more, though. I think Varys will manipulate events behind the scenes and will also have the gates basically wide open. I don't think there's going to be a battle for King's Landing, really. I think that young Griff is going to take it relatively easily. I think that we see that vision in the House of the Undying that Daenerys sees, I think is of young Griff coming into King's Landing, being applauded and all this stuff, because the evil Lannisters have been taken off of the throne. Young Griff is restoring the Targaryen power, where all these people will be remembering maybe peacetime. I think that I think this is Varys's book. In terms of, we've talked about how Littlefinger, his big book is like A Storm of Swords in the first 3 books. That's all of his mass manipulation, creating this huge conflict. Varys's is going to be, I think, the next one. I think too, Dakota is always a little, he's always got his things. Also, it's good to see Streamlabs bot is actually working. I wasn't sure if it was working or not. I put that in before the stream today, so that's good. If we don't get Dream, I hope Winds ends with Aegon ruling peacefully. That's the great thing, is that if we only got Winds of Winter and we never got Dream, and theoretically young Griff is on the throne, he would always be the king of A Song of Ice and Fire. So, thank you, Ashley, on the lights in the background. They're a little droopy because I'm not good at like getting the corners, and also I had too much. So I have like this giant strip, but it goes, you guys can't really see it, but it goes from all the way underneath here, goes all the way up. It goes all the way around this room to over here. You know, it's nice. I like having the light when I don't have my lights on, but yeah. I love the early access videos. Yes, I'm glad, though you guys have had those out. I will say, unfortunately for Patreon members, Patreon just trying to upload 4K videos to is horrible. I tried yesterday to upload the Renly video about 3 times, and it just canceled and glitched and didn't actually send it out 3 different times. So I just got it out before the stream. So that was really annoying. I hope by the end of the night I'll have the last video up for Patreon. I will say, again, if you want to support this channel, do YouTube memberships. I get less of a cut, and I'm okay with that because it's way better for you guys as you get more out of it. Like, you just do. And when I start doing things like, because for Night of the Seven Kingdoms and House of the Dragon Season 2, I'll have exclusive videos up for that. I'll start posting like actual exclusive videos for members, like, preparing for it, maybe doing character build-ups and reviews will be on there. So if you want to support me on that. I love my Patreon members, but Patreon is much more difficult to get things on it than it is for YouTube. What do you see in store for Margaery in Winds? Margaery's a tough character to predict, because what we're going to see right away is the Battle of Steel and/or for Storm's End with Mace Tyrell versus Young Griff. And so if Young Griff wins that battle, which I think we all believe he's going to, the question is, how is he going to win it? Is he going to win it through an actual battle? Will houses betray Mace Tyrell? Very possible. Or will it be something where Mace Tyrell allows Young Griff to just do what he's got to do and maybe stays out of the war? I don't know. And that's the question that you have, because if you're George, having Young Griff defeat Mace Tyrell would help take out a couple of those loose end characters that we need to start condensing the plot down into. So if that is the case, if Mace Tyrell dies to young Griff, obviously Margaery is not going to support, or the Tyrells at large are not going to support young Griff. So if that is the case, Margaery's in a tough spot because Margaery is married to Tommen. So her ship kind of dies with Tommen. Unfortunately, I think Tommen is going to die. So that also means I think Margaery is probably going to die. And I could see her dying to Cersei, trying to forestall this prophecy. And in a lot of ways, she's creating it, right? She's isolating herself farther and farther from the Tyrell faction. I think Margaery's kind of screwed. I don't think she's going to go down the way she did in the show, for instance, but I also think that she's still doomed, unfortunately. And the real question with Margaery is, like, how intelligent is Margaery? Like, how much of a player is Margaery? We saw in the show, like, she was a major player. But in the book, we just don't have that because we only see her really through, like, Cersei's eyes, and we see her briefly through Sansa and Tyrion's eyes. We don't really know how good of a player Margaery is. I think that she's going down with the Tommen ship. That would be my guess, Ashley. I see Aegon and Dany coming to a tentative peace to help Jon in the north, and that time he may bond with a dragon. That's how we may get another dance, and Aegon gaining a dragon. I think that could make a lot of sense. I think that what we're going to see with Aegon and Dany is there's going to be tension there. I think regardless of if they team up, if they go to war instantly, there's going to be tension there just based upon the circumstances of both characters. Because Daenerys comes over, she's not going to be viewed as well. Young Griff is the person that has taken power. He's restored the Targaryens to power, all of that kind of stuff. I think he's going to be a lot more arrogant. I think the dynamic between him and her is going to be at polar ends of the spectrum, more or less. And could I see the idea of Aegon getting a dragon because he spends time with one of the dragons? I very easily could see that. I think that Tommen is going to die from probably the Sand Snakes. And if you believe that Arianne is the one that's going to take everything from Cersei, which is what I believe as of right now, it's going to be Arianne, just because she's going to ascend with young Griff and her power and all that. It would also, like, be nice if it was the Dornish that were directly responsible for Tommen's death. I like the Sand Snakes for killing Tommen, personally. Sydney, I don't think so. The only way I could see Margaery getting betrothed or married 2 more times would be she'd have to probably go with young Griff. But then, like, if she goes with young Griff, and also young Griff with the Dornish, like, I think Margaery's going down with the ship. I think she's going down with the ship. I see the Tyrells folding in line with Aegon quite easily. The only problem I have with that is, would Mace Tyrell put aside his differences and possibly go with the Dornish? And also, you got to remember, the Tyrell power right now, they're on the throne because of Tommen and the Lannisters. So would he be willing, seeing that the situation is going badly, to forgo that? I don't know if I see that happening. Agreed, Ashley. Like, I think that there are going to be, I think if there's a battle, because you got to remember, the Tyrells have a lot of men. Yes, the Golden Company, more proven, more tested, better army. But I don't think that is enough, because you got to also remember, young Griff needs to get out of this battle, not only winning it, but winning it decisively where he doesn't lose a lot of his men. That would make a lot more sense if you had the Tyrells, maybe some peak support. If you had a number of Tyrell houses that then flip on Mace, that would equal a scenario in which young Griff would win much easier. What's the point of Sorella? A fun detail for fans or part of a larger story? I really don't know, Mats, because the character as of right now, hasn't done anything. And so maybe the idea is it's to spy on Old Town, maybe get information, a number of things. As of right now, I don't know what her relevance to the story is. And that's a whole other part of it is Old Town. There's so many different plot lines going on at Old Town, whether it's the Sorella plot line, whether it's the Samwell plot line, the Euron plot line, the Jaqen plot line. There's so many plot lines going on in Old Town right now. I do wonder like what George has in store for that. I really don't know. I'm increasingly starting to think Dany's dragons won't accept any other rider so long as she lives. Why do you think that is the case, Ashley? Just based upon the idea that George has said there's going to be another dance, it would imply there has to be another person having a dragon. Or do you think that's more on the idea that we're going to see Targaryen versus Targaryen or Blackfire versus Targaryen? What do you think about that? But I agree, Matthew, on the idea that Daenerys does not have much control over her dragons, that her primary bond is with Drogon. If the dragons can be needy, then they may turn to others with strong dragon blood for bonding. Yeah, I think that makes total sense. It's unheard of for 3 dragons to all bond with one person. That is unheard of. There's no precedent for that. And so, yeah, could one of these other dragons go, okay, Daenerys is spending all of her time with Drogon. I have no bond with her really at all anymore. She locked me away. Could I go with somebody like Jon, young Griff? I easily, I could see that happening. The Sparrows, I think, will definitely back young Griff. Cersei, if she is the power of one side of it, and let's say even that Cersei tries to blow up the Faith similar to the show, but again, the Faith and the Sparrows are a larger group of a faction. I think that could easily sway them to young Griff's side. I think they're already going to be on young Griff's side anyway. I heard a theory that Fagon will defeat Euron but not survive long past that. That's interesting. I don't think that young Griff is going to be the person to deal with Euron. I think that's going to be I think Euron is like the end game boss that the show wanted Cersei to be. So after the other's threat is dealt with, then it was Cersei. I think in the show it's more going to be or not in the show. In the book it's going to be Euron plus Cersei's involved. But I think Euron's going to be the big bad. I think it's going to take a mixture of all of our main characters. I think Daenerys, everybody will be involved in taking down Euron. How could Cersei blow up the wildfire under the Sept was removed before the Battle of the Blackwater? She could place more. That would be my quick answer to that. Hot take. The Martells and Tyrell secretly put down their feud years ago, but have publicly maintained it to more easily take down enemies. I don't think so. I think that certain members have. We get the quote of how Willis and Oberyn are on good terms, even though Oberyn basically crippled him. I think that goes back like generations and generations. So I'd have to see like, why do you think they set that aside? You know, the Tyrells and Martells have some of the worst history. So I don't know. I think Rhaegal will be young Griff's because he was born from Miri and she teaches Dany tough lessons. So Rhaegal is going to teach Dany, is going to give her tough lessons as well. I could see Rhaegal being young Griff. It would also signify the idea that Rhaegar was the father of young Griff, allegedly. That could also make sense. So I think there's a lot of stuff there. Sorella equals Quaithe. It's interesting. I gotta look into that theory. That'd be an interesting one to look at. Blackfire versus Targaryen War. I got you, Ashley. I don't remember exactly on if George said the Dance of the Dragons didn't have to involve Daenerys, but I mean, it almost has to. Like, she's the only Targaryen that we know of in the story right now, outside of, okay, Jon probably is. Like, it almost has to. Unless it's the idea of Euron gets a dragon, and then Euron goes against young Griff, or goes against Jon with a dragon. Like, that's the only way I could see that happening. Ooh, I'll have to look into that theory about Jon getting Euron's armor. That could be cool. Yeah, but Dany hatched them all at once, so they're all bonded to her for her life. I don't know though, because none of them seem to actually have that connection with Daenerys anymore. Like Daenerys has no control over them at all. She's even struggling to connect with Drogon, and that's the one that she's bonded to the most. So I think it's very possible that one of the dragons could bond to somebody else. Um, in the House of the Undying, the Mummer's dragon doesn't have a crown. Youngriff doesn't need to have a crown, like as he's entering the city. Like he could be crowned, in King's Landing. I agree, Violet. I think that Euron will be the big threat after the others are dealt with. Assuming we see wins, what are some moments or scenes you most want to see happen and or get resolved? So the major ones that come to mind are the Stannis plotline. I'm really interested to see how George ends that, like the Bolton Stannis stuff. I think that seeing Young Griff takes King's Landing, I would be very interested to see Jon's parentage being revealed, whatever that entails. I think will be amazing for the story. And then probably Daenerys coming to Westeros. Those would be the big ones for me. Okay, Ashley, I can see it. I get it. I just don't know like if that extends to everybody in the Tyrell family. Do you think we will get a definitive answer about Aegon's origin, whether he's a Blackfire or the true, whether he's a Blackfire or he's the true Blue Art, or if he's Rhaegar's? I think that I'm kind of like 50-50 on it because I think it's very George R.R. Martin to leave it open-ended and to never tell us and make us speculate on it. But I think that at the same time, if Daenerys goes to Pentos and we see Illyrio again before the story's done, Illyrio could confirm it. So I think that it is possible on both sides on us seeing his identity. I think it's more George R.R. Martin, though, to leave it up for debate. Grease don't want to answer my party question because he knows the answer is House Frey. What are you talking about, Dakota? Oh, hold on. Based on food, music, and setting, what house do you think throws the best parties? That's a tough one. I feel like this is probably a boring answer. I'm going to say House Tyrell. Just based on how the Purple Wedding was, they probably throw some crazy parties. What would Viserys have done with 3 newly hatched dragons but no money or men? Mats, I think this would have drove in Viserys even further. Like now instead of Viserys thinking, oh, he's the last dragon and he's gonna do all this stuff, he's gonna think he's the chosen one. So I could very easily see Viserys doing something stupid, getting himself killed, and all 3 of the other dragons getting taken, just because of his personality and how like he's just not that intelligent. I think if Viserys had the dragons, what would happen is he'd be killed and his dragons would be taken by one of the slaver cities, more than likely. Or if he went back to Pentos, I think Illyrio might just take his dragons. I don't know. Rickon plotline. It'll be interesting to see how much we get of it. Will George do one of these where we go to Davos and it's like, oh, this is what happened. So. Never going to happen, but I want to see a Shy. I don't know if we're going to have enough time for a Shy. I think the way we see a Shy is through magic or through visions or something like that. The Red Wedding was pretty lit. I don't know. I mean, they weren't serving the best food. The music wasn't very good. There's a lot of entertainment. I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on. I'll give you that. Part of me wonders that if Olenna Tyrell was going to poison Joffrey, was she actually in league with Oberyn rather than Littlefinger, and nobody expects it because everyone thinks they're feuding? That would be a good idea. I think the issue with it is there's not a lot to like back it up. Like motivation wise, it makes sense, but it would in line with the idea that Oberyn also is poisoning Tywin, so he poisons Joffrey, creates a situation where it's blamed on Tyrion that allows him to fight the Mountain, and then he also then poisons Tywin and then leaves with Tyrion. Like it adds up with motivations and where the story went, but there's just not a lot that like we can verify that with. It's kind of just like a theory that like makes sense, but there's not a lot there necessarily. Rickon, the only Stark I like. What about? Well, I always thought that you said, the only good Stark is a dead Stark. So. Will we learn what happened to Uncle Benjen in the Winds of Winter? Yes. I think we will find out through Bran's plotline. Very likely. Like, because if we don't find out in the next book, when are we ever going to find out? So. You should watch Linda and Elio's YouTube video about Rickon being a Song of Ice and Fire's personification of Backlon, an entity from one of their other novels, or one of his other novels. I will have to look into that. That's another thing. I've never read any of George R. R. Martin's other work besides the Song of Ice and Fire related, so. The Targaryen loyalists are just a bunch of all men thirsty for them that just love them because they wanted to bed them. Loyalists just see them as objects for desire and is gross. Well, that's one part of it. I mean, the idea that the Targaryens are above normal people, like they're half gods themselves or whatnot, and so marrying into them also makes you above everybody else. So there's definitely that part of it. But other people like back the Targaryens, like more the small folk or the common people, because of at times there was peace. So, for instance, in A Clash of Kings, like Arya is with, a group of people that have been captured, and she hears some of them talking about, oh, well, back in Aerys's day, there was peace and all this stuff. Like, people look at the Targaryens now almost as that, like, a very nostalgic feeling because of how the realm was so well governed or how successful they were doing. So, I think it's a lot more complicated than just the idea that they wanted to just sleep with them, more or less. But I think it is part of it. Have you done a video on the Hooded Man? Actually, I don't think I've done a dedicated video to it. I do want to do one. I've just never really like gotten super in depth with the theories of it, so I don't know as much on it. Like I know some of the candidates, like Mullen, I believe, is one of the candidates. There's the idea that Theon, it's part of his like his imagination idea. I'll have to look into it, but I think it's an interesting concept. I just don't know as much about it as like other theories. Did Oberyn come to King's Landing expecting to kill Lannisters and their bannermen, or did he just jump at the chance when it became legal? I think it's a mixture of both. I think Oberyn came to King's Landing knowing he wanted to get justice for Elia, and he knew that likely that was going to involve possibly killing people like Gregor or killing people like Tywin or whoever. And I think as the situation evolved, Oberyn took those chances. Like, he took the chance of killing Gregor, and then that would lead to, well, if he kills Gregor, he's openly opposing the throne. He's publicly, denouncing Tywin for his actions during the sack of King's Landing. He knows he has to leave with Tyrion instantly after that trial. That's where you could see a situation where it's like, okay, what's the downside of poisoning Tywin? Like, you have to leave the city anyway. They already want to arrest you and kill you. Why not just go a step further? So I think that it was initially, yes, he did plan on killing some people and getting justice, but it also evolved as he was there. He adjusted to the situation. Fair enough, Dakota. Who should kill Euron, and why is the answer anyone other than Theon? It should be Theon or Asha. Those are the only two options that I think should kill Euron at this point. Do you think Sansa will become a major player in the Game of Thrones, or will she ever be a place on the board? No, her trajectory is she's going to be a player. She's going to be somebody that's learning how to play the Game of Thrones, and she eventually will be at the top. That is what I believe. Very similar to Arya. She's been on this journey of becoming an assassin, and she will learn those skills. Sydney, Theon doesn't need to get to Old Town. I think that Euron will sit the throne at some point. I think while everyone's distracted with the others, Euron could sweep in, takes King's Landing, and take the throne. I don't think it necessarily is about Theon getting to Euron. More that Euron more or less will get to a place where Theon could deal with the problem. Um, Basically, the theory posts that the Skagos will worship Rickon as a god because of his abilities, and he'll lead them around the north doing religious executions of House Stark's enemies. Interesting. I'd have to look into that. Like, why? I mean, I could see the idea of them following him because he has a direwolf and the symbolism of him being a warg, but I don't know. Like, he's still a kid, so I don't know. I like Theon too. I just don't know how he just escaped Winterfell and is with Stannis. So you don't? Are you saying like you don't know how Theon's going to get out of that situation? The way I see it is, so Theon is more or less going to be put on trial. I think that he is going to basically confess that he didn't kill Bran and Rickon, that he killed the other boys, and I think that that is going to do enough to not let him die. I think Theon will be kept alive, and then at some point, I think he will be set free. I think he will be set to atone for his sins with the Starks. How will Sansa return from being Elaine? It's just all going to come down to when Sansa flips on Littlefinger. Um, and the other part of that will be during probably the Harry the Heir, like marriage type plotline. Do you think D&D gave Sansa Arya's storyline? She was Roose Bolton's cupbearer, and Stannis ascending Justin Massey to Bravos, and George said that Ramsay's hounds will fight direwolves. Hold on. Do you think D&D gave Sansa Arya's storyline? She was Roose Bolton's cupbearer, and Stannis ascending. So I think the whole idea of Sansa is within the show. They gave Sansa Jane Poole's whole plot line, more or less, is what they did. And it just didn't really work in the show because the show, it just completely derailed where her storyline was going. So I hope I answered that. I feel like I didn't necessarily, but yeah. But I could also see in terms of Ramsay's hounds fighting the direwolves, I could easily see that being Ghost or Shaggy Dog or whoever. I believe Cersei that Euron is working with Stannis. The moment Victarion blows the horn and the wall melts, all the water makes it so Euron can sail all over the kingdom with the bigger rivers. I don't think that Euron is working with Stannis. That is just wild, given the history between those two factions. Also, I don't think Stannis would ever work with someone like Euron, unless he was extremely desperate. And also, he's been in the North for almost the whole time. He has no connection with Euron. So I don't know how that would happen, but interesting idea. Thank you for the super chat. Would Viserys contest Fagon's claim if he invaded Westeros while he was alive, or would he rush to someone he believes to be family at the cost of his crown? Matt, what do you mean? So, like, let's say Viserys is still alive, and are we talking about like the same trajectory? Like, so Aegon becomes king, or because I think Viserys, if he saw Fagon become king, I think Viserys would just be like, no, I'm the chosen one. I'm the rightful ruler of Westeros, the Iron Throne. I think he would 100% contest Fagon. I don't think he would let Fagon sit the throne. Does the Stark name die with the Stark pups, or will it live on through Sansa passing it down? That's a great question, because it doesn't look like Bran can have kids. Rickon, it depends if he survives. Sansa, the problem with Sansa is she going to ever want to get married again, based on all of her experiences with it? I think somebody has to keep the Stark line going, and whether that's going to be Jon, whether that's going to be Sansa, maybe it's Arya. I think it has to live on some way. I'm just not sure how. I'm not sure which character does. Uh, Hi, Efren. How are you? Benjen POV for A Dream of Spring's prologue. I could see it. Like let's say we get hints of Benjen still being alive from Brand's POV. Maybe we see him through warging or all of that. And then maybe the next book we start off with Benjen, and maybe he's trying to get to the wall, inform them of something, or we see him spying on the other's army, or maybe he's a prisoner. It's very possible. This is the way I would look at it, Viserys, or not Viserys, Matt. I think Viserys would view it as this is a pretender. I think that he wouldn't buy the story, and I also think Viserys would be way too arrogant, way too spoiled, and all that stuff to set aside his own claim. Whose name did Elia call before she died? I mean, I would likely think it would be probably Rhaegar, but or maybe Oberyn. It might have been Oberyn. That would make sense. Oberyn being like very close to Elia, kind of her protector. Rhaegar has left, all this stuff. I can see that. She could take on a ward and give them the Stark name. It's possible. If Jon, for instance, let's say Jon had kids and he like marries Val or whatever, then maybe Val, like Val's line with Jon possibly, and then they could be brought up maybe in Winterfell by Sansa. It's possible. Sydney, I'm like back and forth on the pink letter because I think I started as a firm Ramsay wrote it, but then as I go through, like, there's a lot of foreshadowing in the Winds of Winter sample chapter pointing to Stannis with Theon, like Theon's help writing it. I think Mance is a great shout out. I think it's one of those factions. It's either Stannis, Mance, or Ramsay. It's got to be one of those three factions. Also, yes, Harry Lloyd, fantastic actor. I wish he was involved with more Song of Ice and Fire projects. We need him. We need him just more. We just need more of him. But yeah. So thank you guys for coming to the stream. We got some great questions in there. Had a bunch of great discussions. I am getting close to 8,000 subscribers, so we'll probably do a Q&A type video, maybe live stream for that. I didn't do one for 7,000, so we definitely got to do something for 8,000. But I think, again, thank you everybody for coming in and all of that. And I will see you guys in the next stream. Bye, guys.